black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and this is part two of a two-part series that I'm putting on for your, I hope, education and who we are as people of African descent. For those of you who are new to the show, the Umoja Circle is an African-centered talk show whose purpose is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. This is part two of my two-part shows are dealing with basically what's going on in the present moment where a lot of these MAGA Republicans are taking books out of classrooms. They're preventing kids to understand the true history of America. They don't want to face the fact that America is not the mythological place that these kids are being told. In part one, I started off with a poem by a 14-year-old white boy who titled his poem Privileged White Boy. And it was a very powerful poem. This 14-year-old kid, who most likely read African history or studied African history in his short life, realized, and it's based on the poem that you can see on YouTube, White Boy Privilege is the title of the poem, that he realized that he was a privileged white male in this society. And he's facing this reality that he did not walk through this earth thinking of himself as a racist, and I don't even consider him a racist, okay? He might have his prejudice like any other human being, but he realized that the society that he was told that everybody was equal in, he realized no, that this system was created for people that look like him and his parents and his great-grandparents and those who came before him and who are Americans. But a lot of people that look like me and our Latino brothers and sisters, this system was never meant for them, and the struggle is still alive and well. And he realized his privilege. Again, like I said, I started off in the previous show stating that understanding history is necessary to heal today or tomorrow, because it might not happen in my lifetime. But we got to have a clear and honest discussion, and that was the purpose of the Black history movement in the late 1960s. Right into the 70s, it was this realization that we needed to understand ourselves. Carter G. Woodson understood it even further back in 1926 when his group put together the first celebration of Black History Week. It wasn't for gee whiz trivia. He understood the psychology of the people is shaped by who they think they are. And he saw that a lot of when he wrote The Miseducation of the Negro, he wasn't talking about the black kids in primary school or public schools that were getting miseducated. He was talking about the talented tenth, of the boys who were going to these white-facing universities and learning all that information about white history, ignoring and being fuddled in by the lesser than history of the black people that they were teaching, say that they didn't accomplish anything. Those were the kind of terminology that were taught back in the early 1900s and the late 1890s and so on, that some blacks were allowed to go into these white face in university, but what they were being taught was a distorted history of themselves. You know, they didn't know that we ruled, like this book here, like I showed in the first show, when we ruled the world. This is who we are. Okay, that image in the front of this book is this black woman of the 18th dynastic period. Okay, one of the high points of ancient Kemetic land in Egypt. 19th, her name is Queen T, and her people and the world. We dominated this planet for thousands of years, but we don't know that. We are taught that we were nothing but savages. By the time one of the great empires that fallen apart, called the Songhai Empire, that I talked about in the previous show, you know, we had these great empires. We understood how to run governments. We understood the great Mali Empire, which was one emperor of the great Mali Empire, Mansa Musa, one of the richest men on the planet in history. There was a study done, an economic study done with great historical people and their wealth, including those who we call the richest people in the world today. And guess who came out number one based on what he did? Documented. You know, Mansa Musa was documented as the richest man that ever lived, okay, according to the records. And he was an African, one of the emperors of Mali on the west coast of Africa. And we got to understand that. We didn't start in 1619. As the great Dr. Henry Clark said, and I've said this before, if you start at 1619, then all the stuff that came after that looks like success, instead of it what it actually was, an interruption in the history of people that our ancestors. Those of us here in America, whether it's throughout the diaspora, whether you're from the Caribbean, whether you're from Georgia, whether you're from London, wherever in that diaspora you ended up, your ancestors, those ancestors had ancestors who go back to those great empires of Mali and Songhai and Ghana. The Ghana Empire lasted from 330 BC to 1250 AD, okay? But you do not know this. You do not know this. All right, let me continue with some thoughts about why we need to understand our history. Why? People who take seriously the understanding of their history is the people who recognize this truth, that you cannot fix a problem unless you can see it. We are blind to the truth of who we are as a people. So how can we fix it if we don't understand what was happening to us to make us not know who we are? Why in this country? Why throughout the planet to this day, everywhere you see black and brown people, they're always at the bottom of the socioeconomic strata of whatever society we consider in the West. Why? Not because we were the savages and the ignorant people that was brought that white man's privileges that was talked about at the turn of the 1900s. Roger Kipling wrote a poem, White Man's Privilege, that it was white people, white Europeans, privileged to educate the brown and black and all the red people that they found in throughout the world, to justify their occupation of those folks' land, which is wrong. If you go down to the South in South America, you'll see great empires that the native people have who live here, okay? If you go to Africa, you find the remnants of great empires that those people have. You know, if you go to Australia, all those people had communities and empires. Understand that. But if you are in a system, like an educational system or a political system that was established here in America, it always put the European images first, which gave you what you're getting now is reflected in that system. That's racism. Racism is not individuals. It is a system that individuals can use their prejudices to manipulate, to dominate a group. And that's what we got to understand as white Americans. That's what that kid in the first show, at the beginning of the first show, who wrote that poem, White Boy Privilege, realized. It's not him as an individual. He had to struggle through that cognitive dissonance, and that's what he was doing with that poem. And I commend him for that. But a lot of white Americans don't want to face that fact. Okay, that's why they rather pull these books off the shelves and pretend that they're somehow harming or doing some kind. No, they just don't want to face the truth. Let's go on to the next. Why we need to study historical knowledge. Historical knowledge is what shines the light on the problems found in the present moment. Why are we having these struggles? Why are we still thinking that white America thinks that we are lesser than? Okay? You might not think you're doing that, but if you go to a white community, why do you always go to a white community? Why are there still segregated communities? Why do we say when we talk about good schools or good communities, we're talking about white communities? You see, that's that underlying, unconscious, biases that we have to deal with, which is a remnant of a time not too long ago when white people openly said that we were a lesser being. Lincoln said it, okay? Benjamin Franklin said it. All the people that we're taught, Jefferson, Madison, all these people that we're taught in the schools, miseducated, as these great bringers of equality and justice that is brought up all the time when we have the discussions of the greatness of America. They looked at you, people that look like me, as less than, not even human. We were chattel, okay, like cattle, movable property. We wasn't even put into the roles of the every 10 years when we count human beings in America, we were left out till the first time a census was taken in 1870. Prior to that, we were counted with the cows and the horses and the donkeys. Come on. We got to deal with this historical truth about who we are with this place called America. Let's go on to the next one. To put another way, there's an ever-unfolding present is simply the result of an ever-nourishing past. The present moment is always nourished by the past. The word present, let's look at that word in this little statement. P-R-E-S-E-N-T, right? Separate the P-R-E from the S-E-N-T and you'll see present. It is the present moment. It's sent to us today, from that past. Okay, so you can never, like Faulkner said, the past is always with us. And it's affecting us each day. But if we ignore it by not studying that past to heal ourselves like you do, if you go to a psychiatrist or psychologist today, you have to deal with the past. And most of the traumas and most of the psychiatric issues is done from a secret that is held within the patient. In order to face that, the patient must face that secret that he's keeping inside, that's making him do the kind of behavior that is they're having to deal with and go to the psychiatrist in the first place. You have to deal with what's inside of you that's healed. And America has not dealt with the truth of who she really has been when it comes to other groups in this country, that she only dealt with and put this thing together for white domination, period. Okay? There's some change, but until you face that underlying truth that the system is tainted, then we still have problems that will manifest. Let's go on. Again, today, white America must come to this realization, like I was saying, that when it comes to the discussion of race and racism in America, only through historical knowledge, whatever you are wishing away will continue to nibble and gnaw at you until you gather the courage to face that which you rather not see. And that's what they're trying to do when they're taking these books out. Not because they're doing their children any good, they're in denial. Those white supremacists who are part of the MAGA, they don't want to face the truth. In that poem by that kid called White Boy Privilege, he's facing that truth. It's difficult, but he's facing it, okay? American system still has to heal. Let's go on to the next one. Ignoring or ignorance is no protection from the consequence of inaction. All the racial problems we have today is because a lot of, especially white Americans, don't want to face this truth. Let's go on. This is why Black history courses are so very important to us as Black Americans, because we cannot intelligently know and choose what is good for us collectively as a people until collectively we can intelligently know, respect, and decide who we are. We are not those savages. We're not the people that are constantly put on. We're not the servants only. We're not the horsemen. We're just not something that, you need white officers to in charge of you during war, like they did in the Civil War, World War I and World War II. Had to put white men in charge of a group like we never fought for thousands of years as warriors ourselves, Let's go on to the next one. We as Black American citizens should continue to tell our cultural truths about our ancient African heritage. That's why I say we should not just start in 1619. We should also understand when we ruled this world, going back 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years. Okay, this is what scientists are finding. Archaeologists, anthropologists are finding that, these ancient people look, and I did shows that showed that the Egyptians were Black. You can see some of my earlier shows that I have done that. Okay, and I'm constantly doing it, and that's why I do this show, for that reason, right in front of you. Let's go on to the next one. Why we must deal with Black history. Because our people, because our history as a people of African descent didn't just begin again in Jamestown in 1619 with enslavement. It's in writing there. I put that in writing, but it's so embedded in me. I always keep that thought in my mind when I study. That's why I don't study history only from 1619. Not saying it ain't interesting, not saying that's part of our history, but I look at 1619 until today as an interruption of our ancient and glorious history in Western Africa and in Eastern Africa going back thousands of years. Okay, 1619 and enslavement was an interruption of that world history that we were part of. Okay, let's go on. Enslavement and the year 1619, which always seems to begin our American historical narratives, exactly. For example, if you ask a question about the history of a people of African descent here in America, where would most American students usually start? At 1619. Do you think that's deliberate, or you think that's coincidental? No, it's deliberate. Okay? Who controls who has power can shape how a people think. Whoever controls the images and information of a people will determine how they think. That's a quote from the book 1984 that George Orwell wrote in 1949, where Big Brother's watching you. That fictional society, in reality, he was talking about the British society. And I'm talking about white society. Whoever controls the images and information will determine how you think. And when you call yourself, brothers and sisters, the N-word, when you call our Black women the B-word, you don't see, Queen T. You don't see the great empires of Mali. You don't understand the Gold Coast, which the Europeans were in awe of when they went down the west coast of Africa, the great empires that were resplendent in gold. This is not hyperbole, this is documented facts, folks. That's the people that we descend from, okay? I'm not saying there was no farmers, and I didn't say everybody's the king, the queen now. No. But because of the way people were sold in America, yeah, you might have a king or queen blood in you, because they didn't care. They saw a black body from those slave dungeons. That it might have been a king or a queen or a prince or somebody that was brought over here one of those horrible slave ships. Yes, but that's why we say that, because the domain that you have rule over is yourself. And if you don't know thyself, then what? You just have a barren land, and somebody else is guiding you, which is not the way a human should live. Let's go on to the next. Starting with this sort of historical fact, you talk about the 1619. just doesn't clearly, not accurately explain that our 400 years of negative experiences in America were just an interruption, like I said, of the tens of thousands of years we people of African descent have been continuously participating in world events and can be clearly found if looked for on the map of human history. We've always been there. Okay, there's many people who talk about the Moors in 711 that invaded the Iberian Peninsula, which was Spain, okay, and Portugal. Okay, people are complaining that they're this or that, but if you read the books that I've read, which talks about eyewitness accounts of who those Muslims were, or Moors, which means scorched or burnt. Moor is a Roman word for burnt skin, and Morish, which they got from the Greeks, which they copy everything for, which is Morish, which means scorched. Okay, I look scorched. Okay, burnt brass, as it says in the Bible, hair of wool. That's the description of who would be considered, Israelite at the time. So they were described as black as pitch, the Moors. There was a eyewitness account of a scribe who wrote about when they came in and capitulated and gave up and conquered Spain. Those who conquered were described in such a way: black as pitch, looked like tar, black as the blackest horse. That's how they describe those Moors. But if you don't read, if you don't know that history, you got to depend on somebody else's crazy description, then you have nothing but mayhem and chaos. That's what we're dealing with when we don't understand who we are. Let's go on to the next. Knowledge of black history is necessary for every student who takes a black history course to have a better understanding of the underlying socio-political forces which invisibly undergirds and affects their everyday lives in today's American society. That's what racism is. It undergirds us because it is embedded in the systems, the political system, the economic systems, the military systems, all these systems that still were founded in a racist system that was created in 1789 at the minimum. Or you had something even going back to colonial times. The Edict of Maryland would say that, which were laws that said that no matter what work those black people did, they will not benefit from the fruit of their labor because they did not count. Or Tawney, who said that in the Dred Scott decision, that said he doesn't have the right that any white man's supposed to accept. Okay, because he was an enslaved person, so you cannot treat him under the Constitution as any other white citizens. So when you have these institutions foundationally saying that we are less than, then that's the underlying, and then you're coming up as in the dominant group, not understanding that we're not, and you think that you're a good person because you never had slaves or never you have your cousin is married to a black person. No, it's the system that you have certain type of privilege in, which you're not even aware of that black person that your sister or your cousin is married to will have problems entering because of the underlying socio-political forces, which is invisible to a white person who don't have to deal with those forces as being white. This is what we have to heal. This is what we need and to understand as people of African descent and white Americans. Until we do that, we will constantly repeat. If you ignore it and say you're not going to do anything, white America, then you allow the people who are still trying to take these books out of these schools or out of libraries everywhere, make them illegal to use. Why? These are just books. This is land of the free speech. Why they're pulling them out? Because they don't want you to know or have these discussions. We need to heal. Okay? America needs to heal. Let's go on. The spirit of our enslaved ancestors tell me, okay, to do so through my historical literature. A message that, these books are messages from the past to let me know this is who we are. This is what we have to deal with. Don't make the same mistake that we made. Okay? That's what these books teaches us. Know thyself. Know why we're here. Let's go on. Let's go on to the next one. For Black history is American history. Never forget that part. Okay? When you say American history and everything you see is white, then something's edited out of that history. If you go to a history class and you only talk about George Washington, you talk about you talk about Jefferson, you talk about Abraham Lincoln, and all the great things these people did. Unions was only white. What I saw cowboys was always white. Then you're missing a great part of American history, and that's damaging to any psyche. Let's go on. Until we as a people of African descent have a true and accurate memory of our collective history, we cannot function as a unified group. Why we have these issues. For a group without a collective historical memory will become dysfunctional. Okay? Let's go on to the next one. To be able to ask the right questions in the present moment, such as what factors produce these specific conditions, the majority of African Americans find themselves in today. Why are we here as a group? Not a bunch of individuals. We don't only want to border to this rugged individual. Every group, every culture functions as a group. There's a bunch of individuals, but the individual functions based on the group dynamics. An individual from Japan who was a businessman functioned because of how the group called Japan functioned. China, the same thing, is a collective. Individual businessmen and individual everyday people from China benefit from how the group knows itself, how the group collectively function as a group. Everybody does that, but when we are not knowing who we are, when you let another group determine your history, you will function based on that group, other group's definition of you. And when you believe in their definition, that's how they have power. Okay? And I'll stop it right here. Okay? We must look to history to enhance, in other words, answer the question, who we truly are as a people. And why we do the things that we do as a people. History is the only thing that can teach us that. And I'll stop the way I stopped in the last segment, quoting the great philosopher who said, if you don't learn the lessons of the past, you're doomed to repeat it. Bye-bye.